Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another Power Rangers video. Today we asked the question, have you ever felt like something was missing? Say, for example, you're collecting a Power Rangers toy line. You're watching the show, you're enjoying it, they introduce Megazords and Auxiliary Zords and other combinations, and as you are progressing through the year, you're picking up new toys and you find them in your stores. As you're looking around, you track them down on the internet, but then sometimes you run into an issue like, hey, didn't the Dino Thunder Rangers have a Cephalozord? Or, I don't know, did Korag have his own Megazord? And hey, I thought the little time flyer became the blaster for the Megazord. Why was there nothing ever in that size? Well, today's video is all about that. The incomplete Megazord lines. This is specifically talking about the US releases of Power Rangers Megazords over the years. For example, some items on this list will have been released in other regions, specifically Japan or the UK, and we're not really worried about that. We're more focused on what was missing from the American release. Bandai of America was in charge of this, and we're going to kind of analyze why some of this stuff didn't come out. I have found 10 incomplete Power Rangers lines, and I have ranked them from the best to worst of incomplete lines. Essentially speaking, number 10 is going to be something that's incomplete, but not necessarily something that's essential, while number 1 is going to be something incomplete that's missing something essential. And so for that reason, this list is a little bit opinion-based. I want to go mostly on fact, but the opinion comes in the ranking itself. So if you feel like a line is better or worse without the parts, let me know in the comments below what your personal ranking is. And as far as I can tell, there is only 10 lines that have had incomplete Megazord releases, and that is in the traditional sense of if it's in the Power Rangers season and it's not released in the toy line, it makes it an incomplete Zord line. Essentially speaking, for example, Blast Buggy was released in Power Rangers SPD's toy line, but was only featured in Deca Ranger, never in Power Rangers SPD. Alright, that was cool, they put out a new toy. For example, Dino Maru from Ninja never made it into Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, so he's not missing from the Super Ninja Steel line. One of the things that people will talk about when we talk about incomplete Zords is Megaforce. Megaforce cut Data's Hyper and the Mystic Brothers and the Exotic Brothers from their series, so the toy line not having them isn't an issue. So therefore, with those rules in place, let's begin this list and take a look back at the history of the Power Rangers Megazord toy lines. Number 10, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy from 1999. Now, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy is a very complete Zord line. In fact, what you're seeing here is an actual Galaxy Megazord. But what was missing? Simply, it was just a little bit of flair. And what I mean by that is that, well, this is the only thing that America didn't release. We were lacking the Lights of Orion armor for the Galaxy Megazord, as well as the power-up axe for the Torozord, even though that didn't get as much use. These were released in Japan in their own set with a figure of Bull Black, and it also came with the axes for him. So it was a kind of a special release, and there's really nowhere in the American toy line to just release an armor set with an action figure that had already been released. So I think Bandai of America opted to just not release it. Now, why is this number 10? Well, it's very simple. In terms of incomplete Zord lines, this is the least shattering. If you don't have the Lights of Orion armor, you're not missing out on a whole lot. It really is just 3 pieces of plastic that just attach to the robot. It's nothing major, nothing missing from a combination, nothing missing from a Zord lineup of characters. If you didn't have the Lights of Orion armor, it's okay, you can live without it. I didn't have it for years and I was fine. So that's why I think I put Lost Galaxy at number 10. But it is something that is incomplete about the line, but doesn't affect it too much. Number 9, Power Rangers Mystic Force from 2006. Now this is a very controversial topic, but there's a reason why I placed this very low on the list. The only missing Zord from Mystic Force was the Centaurus Wolf Megazord, belonging to Korag the Nightwolf, a villain for a majority of the series. This means that it's something that Bandai of America didn't feel confident would sell well, and instead they brought over the Phoenix Unizord, which was basically a white version of this. Now, the reason why we're at number 9 in this list, as opposed to higher up, despite there being an entire Megazord missing, is that this was actually released through Bandai UK. So while in America there was no way to get the Centaurus Wolf Megazord at retail, there was a release of it under the international Bandai launches. So because of that, it does give it, it does save it from being higher up in the list, but it is an oversight. Luckily, due to the Mystic Force Megazord still using the same Japanese molds, if you got yourself a Woolkaiser, like I did here, it'll be compatible. And if you're somehow able to import a Centaurus Wolf Megazord from the UK, you have that option as well. It does leave out a chunk of the fan base from completing their collections at normal distribution, but it's not something that, cripples the entire line, as there are other options to completing the set. Number 8. Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue from the year 2000. Missing Zords, the Life Force Megazord. Now, the Life Force Megazord in the series was a specially built Megazord that worked on the Rangers' life energy, which sounds incredibly dangerous now thinking about it. However, in the series itself, it ended up becoming kind of a major plot point, especially in the finale. So, it ended up becoming very important to Lightspeed Rescue as a whole. Now, as a toy in Japan, it was released as Max Victory Robo Black, a black and gold repaint of Max Victory Robo, known here as the Lightspeed Solar Zord. This was never released in America, and there could be a varied amount of factors here. For example, it was a repaint set, and it was, appearing in the last 3 episodes of the series. It's very possible that, Bandai didn't know about it being in the show itself or something like that until it was too late to release it. And other than that, I could have seen this coming out as a Toys R Us exclusive, much like it did in Japan, just as a giant box set, but alas, it didn't happen. The reason why this one's a little bit higher on the list than the Missing Centaurus Wolf Megazord from Mystic Force is because it is harder to get. Where Woolkaisers can be obtained relatively close to their original price or a little bit higher depending on where you look, it is very, very difficult to find a Max Victory Robo Black for anything under, $250. It's a lot harder to track down due to its rarity, and it is ironic that it only had 1 episode appearance in Go-Go 5, but 3 episodes appearance in Lightspeed Rescue, but was only released over in Japan. So that's pretty much why I rank it a little bit higher, just because of the rarity of this Megazord, though it still isn't really an essential piece of the Lightspeed Rescue collection. Number 7, Power Rangers Time Force from the year 2001. Missing Zords, Transwarp Megazord, and the Megazord Scale Time Flyer. Now, this is a little funky of a situation because, in the grand scheme of things, the Time Force, the Time Shadow, and the Q-Rex are the primary Megazords of the series. But there are a couple exclusions here that I think do mean that America's missing out on a bit of the toy line. Obviously, the Transwarp Megazord is a bit of a complicated situation. In Japan, Provitus here was released with a full-scale base that could hold all of the Time Flyers on it, including Time Shadow. It's massive, it's big, I don't even have room to display it in its full form. It is really large. But I think at some point they might have, thought about releasing it, as there was a micro playset done for the Transwarp base. So it's probably out of the cards to say that the whole base was going to come over, but I don't see why not they could not release this guy. This guy on his own makes a cool robot, and he was featured in battle in the series, and I know a lot of people were looking for him. He could have come with the Time Gate piece still, since it did attach to him, but overall, I think one of the biggest factors in this guy not getting released over here is, in fact, his gimmick. His gimmick involves the rotating punch we see in the series. He's usually anchored down to the base itself, which, they could have made a new base. But this gimmick here, it's kind of intense. It is got the propulsion needed to launch the vehicles off the base, and that does mean that it is incredibly powerful on the spring. Springs could have been tamed back, it's happened before, there's a lot of different factors involved. I think they totally should have released the Transwarp Megazord over here, as it would have just added to the toy line a bit, because I felt like Time Force's toy line was lacking, especially since it was missing a couple items. The other thing that was lacking was the Time Flyer. Now, the Time Flyer was released in 5-inch action figure scale that could become a roleplay blaster with some Nerf darts. We'll just keep these here. This version comes with the minifigures designed for the opening cockpits and the Time Flyers, and also has the ability to transform into the blaster for the Time Shadow, the Time Force Megazord Mode Blue. This has got, the proper handle, so you can actually use it as he did in the series. Not having this means that the Megazord is missing a weapon, which I kind of find to be important, especially when it's the only weapon for Time Shadow, or Time Force Megazord Blue. Don't know why I keep saying Time Shadow. The other thing is, yes, these figures can fit inside the Time Shadow. They did release, Bandai of America did their own versions in the micro play sets that also did kind of fit in the cockpits, but not as well as these. I think that these are, they're a little bit smaller, than the Bandai of America microfigures, and maybe that contributed to it, but I think this should have been included with the Time Force Megazord or something similar. Or hey, bundled it with the Transwarp to give it more presence on the shelf. Overall, I think that this line, you know, while these two things aren't essential, I feel like my collection is better and the play factor goes much higher having these in my collection. Number 6, we have Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel from 2018. This missing Zord is the Sub-Surfer Zord. This is one of those things where I talked about this a lot in my Ninja reviews I did recently, where I pointed out the fact that Bandai of America completely skipped over the Sub-Surfer Zord. And at the time, they were making Zords that were, you know, full repaints of the Ninja Steel Megazord with new auxiliaries included instead of releasing them on their own. And it just seemed like they never got to it. The Super Ninja Steel line ended up having only one new Megazord, being the Blaze Megazord. Everything else got released prior. Both the Rumble Tusk and Astro Megazord repaints were released in Ninja Steel. The Bull Rider and Ninja Steel Megazord also released during Ninja Steel. And because of the timing, the Lion Fire Fortress Megazord also got released during Ninja Steel. So Super Ninja Steel definitely had room in its toy line, but it just didn't happen. Why is this a problem and why is it higher on the list? The placement of the list here is that because it's an auxiliary that does not be featured in the combinations involving the Megazords, it's not a super high priority for a lot of people. In fact, the Sub-Surfer Zord only had a handful of scattered appearances in the season, so it's not necessarily an essential piece. But the problem is that you can't get a Bandai of America Zord compatible Sub-Surfer Zord. Due to the mold change, you can't get the Japanese one to fuse with the American one. The connections are different and everything's not going to work properly. So because of that, it becomes an oversight. And before anyone mentions, the Dino Maru from Ninja never appeared in Super Ninja Steel. Therefore, I can't count that against the line. A Zord that doesn't appear in the show but appeared in the Sentai isn't incomplete for a toy line based on Power Rangers. So we don't worry about this guy, but I think the Sub-Surfer Zord is one of those things that in recent memory probably should have happened, and the fact that it didn't is kind of a bummer.